He's using up all the hot water!
What?
Could you stop using the hot water, please?
Oh yeah, sorry.
Hello everybody and welcome to today's video. I am very excited to be talking about a PlayStation 5 game today. One that I have been looking forward to a great deal. I haven't known about it for too long. I only recently discovered it existed, but ever since I found out about it, I have been looking forward to it a lot. So the PlayStation 5 has actually had a pretty decent launch lineup, what with Demon's Souls, the Spider-Man game, Sackboy, Astro's Playroom, and so on. But of course my big love is of RPGs and JRPGs, and for me the first game that I'm really hanging out for with a new console is that first RPG experience. And I know that Demon's Souls is an RPG technically, but we're talking about something a bit more traditional here. The good news is that game is Haven, and it is the most perfectly wholesome little thing. Not only is it an excellent first RPG for the PlayStation 5, it also really highlights the strengths, I think, of the console and what it offers to smaller independent developers. And the game itself is this most wonderfully creative, wholesome little thing. I really love it. So the game's a spacefaring story about a young couple that have escaped their homeworld to live and survive together in isolation on a deserted planet. The reason they have escaped is quite clear. Back home, people have their partners chosen for one another by an entity called the Matchmaker, and these two hadn't been chosen for one another despite being deeply in love. Now, I would hazard a guess that this concept was the developer's spin on the Romeo and Juliet style love story, minus the tragedy at the end, or at least I don't believe there's a tragic ending coming up. I haven't quite finished the game at this stage, but everything about the story so far has led me to believe that it will have a positive spin at the end. But I think there's more to that as well than just that core theme. The society that these two escape from is a highly technically advanced one. You could call it a STEM-driven society, and it's one that treats people like resources to pair up and breed for the purposes of maximum productivity and efficiency. Now, my read on Haven is that it's a rejection of that kind of dehumanizing effect that technology and STEM skills, particularly those that we see in Silicon Valley, presents to us. Each time that the homeworld is spoken about by these two, it's defined as this place where humans are resources, and matters more core to humanity, such as love, are suppressed. Meanwhile, these two, having escaped that, are living the most joyful life together in a space where technology is really secondary to the human experience. Now, Haven is really quite beautiful and authentic in the way that it explores the excitement and joy of a new relationship. That feeling that you're the only two people on the planet is manifested in a very overt metaphor in this case, but the interactions that we see here through the narrative are really the same as any other young couple interacts with on first moving in together and really starting their life together. They spend hours sitting around just talking about things. They discover each other's deeper hobbies and passions that don't really manifest when you're in that kind of more superficial relationship stage. There's the flirting and the joking, of course, and then there's also the fact that these characters can't keep their hands off one another. Now, Haven isn't sexually explicit, but it's certainly sexually implicit. And I found myself wondering on more than one occasion whether they brought the full gamut of contraceptives that they needed to, because this is certainly not a place to start a family, and they wouldn't have had the facilities to do so. The fact that I was left wondering about that just shows that that is certainly a part of the story and the relationship between these two characters. But I do digress. It's not entirely about that. This is not a fan service game by any means. The point is that this game does a very solid job of setting up a very authentic early stages relationship between two very likable characters. It's just as well that Haven does that, because the entire emotional resonance that the game goes for and the entire narrative strength rests entirely on the relationship that these two characters have, and the developer has really got that right. They obviously spent an awful lot of time poring over every line of dialogue to make sure that it was really there to help build the relationship and the way that these characters interact with one another, and the way that the rest of the world is really secondary. There is that sense that these two characters are in a bubble, living life with one another without too much of concern of the world around them. As a game, Haven is blissfully minimalist in how it does things. It does have exploration, with progress in the game being linked to finding these bridges that take you from one little island of adventure to the next, and then you want to clear that island of various substances called rust and defeat the intoxicated enemies, which we'll get to soon enough before moving on to the next one. It also has survival elements around collecting food and other resources to heal up, build new items and eat. But those elements are really streamlined compared to a lot of other games that have survival mechanics, and I prefer that. I'm not a big fan of how bloated and unwieldy those survival mechanics have become in a lot of these games. This one strips it right down to the minimum, and I think it's for the better for it. And then there is combat, which is quite simple and very elegant in execution. I will get to that in a moment, but the game flat out says right at the start that Haven is not a difficult game before giving you the option to make it even easier. So clearly the intent on this thing was not to challenge you in any way, and they've certainly delivered that. This is not a challenging game. I think that's to the strength of it. I know, of course, there will be a lot of people out there that do like challenge in their games. They will not get it from this one. But I'm hoping that they can look past that and just give it a go anyway, because not everything has to be a challenge to be worthy, and this game certainly proves that. And the fact that it is quite simple does not mean it is not engaging. You've got these kind of anti-gravity boots, which give you a lot of freedom to soar around the world, and the characters actually grumble about walking if you're not using those, so it really does encourage you to get very playful about your movement around the world. There's a freewheeling freedom to this, and again with the romance metaphor, it does appropriately reflect that soaring feeling that you have at that early stage of a relationship where everything seems just so bright and positive and liberating. The combat, meanwhile, actually continues that metaphor for romance too, since being successful in combat relies not on a complex set of skills and abilities and your understanding of how the systems work to make use of them, but rather it relies on your ability to time your attacks. If both characters attack together, they're effective. If they don't, then the combat suddenly does become quite a little bit more challenging. It's here that the multiplayer features are really nice, since you can play with your real-world partner, with each of you controlling one character, to mirror the experience of the on-screen couple, where you need to work together to time your attacks in order to get your way through the various combat encounters. It'll be awkward with anybody else that you might want to play multiplayer with, since the game goes to great lengths to make the metaphor clear that the two characters on screen are a metaphor for yourself and whoever you're playing with, and then they'll leap on each other in the cutscenes. But all of that contributes to the distinctive energy that Haven has even more. Just how many multiplayer games out there are made specifically with a romantic couple in mind, and that aren't a sleazy sex game that you buy from an adult site? Not many at all. There just aren't many games out there that tackle a genuine real-world kind of love. The only thing I don't like much about Haven is that I wasn't totally sold on the character art in the portraits and the narrative sections of the game. It pops up a little bit like a visual novel as the characters talk to one another. I wasn't a big fan of the character art that popped up there. It's nice enough on an objective level, I guess, and I did find that I warmed to the whole characterization of the game as I played on, but I'm not sure whether that was the art itself or it was just that I was really enjoying the character interactions through the dialogue and the narrative. But it does straddle a line between Japanese anime and Western comic art, and I've never enjoyed that attempt by artists to find the middle ground. It looks confused to me about itself, what it's trying to be, whether it is trying to be an anime game or a Western comic style thing, and I'm just not sure that it is possible to find that middle ground in an effective way. Now, with that being said, the character models in the game are really lovely, and the game makes great use of the PlayStation 5's hardware to show scale. Enemies are adorable monsters, and in a truly wholesome direction. You don't actually kill any of them, but you remove the hostility from them so they become docile again. Because, and this goes back to the anti-technology message, it would seem that corrupted technology called rust is what's causing these critters to go mad and attack you. Once healed of that, They even start tagging along, and your characters end up naming them, and they become part of the wildlife in a very serene world. It's a very truly wholesome game in that it's quite non-violent. Even though it has combat scenes, it isn't violent about them. Sadly, I will be more than willing to bet that the low conflict nature of Haven, coupled with its positive messaging and genuine human approach to love, will relegate it to the very periphery of the industry. The developers behind this game, who previously created the indie smash hit Fury, are about to discover that the games industry thrives on hostility and aggression, not warmth and sentimentality. But I will be rooting for the game anyway. It's so rare that we see developers try to delve into a more realistic look at human relationships, let alone make that theme core to absolutely everything to do with the game's narrative and its mechanics. Haven is a really good indication on what this new generation of consoles might mean for the art house and creative developers, and I really do like what I've seen about it. I have a lot more faith, I guess, in the PlayStation 5 as a console now that I've seen this particular game. Right up to the launch of the PlayStation 5, I was really worried about how indies would engage with it, whether it would offer them anything, and whether they would be able to use it to be creative. Now, I always knew in the back of my head that at some stage some developer would come out with something. I didn't expect it to be quite so soon, but Haven has totally sold me on the potential of the next generation to make some really interesting and creative art games. Anyway, that's enough for this video. If you have been playing Haven yourself, let me know your thoughts in the comments. Thanks as always for watching. If you do enjoy my videos, please hit the like and subscribe buttons. And as an added trick, if you click on the little bell icon, you will also subscribe to get notifications, so you'll know as soon as I've uploaded a video. Please do consider backing me on Patreon as well. Your support there can be just $1 a month, but it will help me to continue growing what I do here, and that means a lot, so thank you as always for your support. Otherwise, we will see you at the next video.
Come on, don't be scared.
A big bug like you?